What is our relationship with feedback? This is a fascinating question and something that is really quite personal for me, as well as something in terms of our business that we are particularly interested in, because feedback's critical in organizations. And so I want to talk to you briefly around this concept of our relationship with feedback. What do we mean by our relationship with feedback? And what I mean by our relationship with feedback is, what is our narrative, our story about feedback? Because we all have a reaction to feedback. Sometimes someone gives us some negative feedback and we have this emotional reaction, we have these thoughts, and for all of us it's unique. But all of that comes from something that happens in the past. It comes from a previous experience. We all have a narrative around feedback. And if we want to understand our relationship with feedback, we actually first need to understand our story about feedback. So I want to share with you one of my narratives around feedback, a personal story around feedback. And it relates to my experience of sport. And for many of you watching this, you would have had a similar experience growing up playing sport. And I was a rower. I used to row a lot, and I've rowed for probably 15 years of my life was spent rowing. And like many sports, you measure almost everything. In a rowing boat, you're measuring your heart rate, so you know how hard you're working. You're also measuring, you've got these little computers in your boat that tell you how fast your boat's going. You know your stroke rate. You sometimes have these pressure gauges that tell you how much power has been put into the water. So you're constantly getting this feedback about how fast you're going, how your body's going. You then also have a coach on the side yelling and screaming and giving you feedback as you're going. And then sometimes your coach is also videoing you. So then afterwards you sit down and you review your video. And so my experience, one of my narratives of feedback as a rower is this constant barrage of feedback. And what's really interesting is you then learn that feedback's critical. If I want to get faster, I need to know how fast I'm going. I need to know what I need to be doing to improve my power output. I need to know what my heart's doing. Even interesting, that video feedback, I might be thinking I'm doing great. You then sit down and do your video review, and what you think you're doing and then what's actually visible from the outside is not the case. So just that understanding of getting that video review, which is essentially like a 360-degree feedback, you start getting really comfortable with that, because you realize that it's part and parcel of getting better. And that experience also is then done with other crew members in the same conversation. So you're getting feedback, watching yourself in the video, while you've got your crewmates sitting there. So there's something about getting comfortable not only with feedback, but comfortable with feedback in front of others. And so my narrative around feedback is that feedback's really good, feedback's really important, feedback's critical for success. And so I have this positive experience of feedback. Now, I also have other experiences of feedback that form a fairly complex narrative around feedback for me, but I'm sharing one of those narratives with you, because I then need to be able to then be clear on how does that then impact on my relationship with feedback. So my relationship with feedback today is one where I think it's critical. And when I talk about feedback with clients, it's about really focusing our clients on that feedback's okay. Positive feedback's good, negative feedback's also good. And assisting organizations and leaders to get comfortable with the sense of feedback. For myself personally, even though I might still have a negative emotional reaction to some negative feedback, which is normal, it's human being, but I still take on board, I still embrace that feedback, because that feedback I know intellectually is going to help me get better at stuff. And so what you need to perhaps be thinking about is, what is your relationship with feedback? And I wonder, for those of you who haven't experienced that sporting context, I wonder, what's your relationship with feedback? For kids who've grown up in environments where you've got lots of positive feedback and very little negative feedback, what's their relationship with feedback? For those of us who've grown up in families with an overly critical parent, or in a relationship that's overly critical, I wonder what our relationship would be with feedback in that context. Each one of us has a unique story, a unique narrative around feedback, and we need to understand that narrative and that story and our relationship with feedback. Because when we understand our relationship with feedback, we also then understand not only how we react to feedback, but then particularly as a leader, when you're giving feedback, you're now going to be able to give feedback in a much more empathic and caring manner, because you will then, when you're giving feedback and you're seeing a reaction from someone else, are going to be much more conscious of, I wonder what their narrative is. I wonder what their story is. I wonder what their relationship is with feedback. I would like you to take a moment to pause and consider what is your relationship with feedback, and think about what are those narratives, what are those stories, how is your relationship with feedback being formed by your previous experiences, and do you need to change your story around feedback going forward?